The first sound is a sharp metallic crack, like something breaking inside my skull, pulling me out of a darkness that felt safer than waking up. My breath catches before I even open my eyes, because the air smells like burned metal and melted plastic, and somewhere beneath it, my own skin. I try to move, but pain locks me in place, blooming across my left side like a living thing. Evan's voice drifts in, soft but shaky, telling me it was an accident, that I'm safe now, that everything's going to be fine. But his words feel wrong. There's a flash. Wood splintering, heat swallowing the room, someone's shadow blocking the door. And suddenly, I'm gasping for answers I can't reach. A nurse says I'm lucky to be alive. But luck doesn't leave scars shaped like fingerprints, and as the beeping monitors steady into a rhythm that isn't mine, one question claws its way up through the fog. If it was truly an accident, then why was someone standing over me before the flames closed it? The morning drags on like wet cloth, heavy and suffocating. Hearing me, every time I close my eyes, I see flickers of orange light and hear crackling wood snapping under pressure. But none of it forms a complete memory. Just scattered pieces that feel too sharp to touch. Evan keeps talking, filling the room with explanations I never asked for, about faulty wiring and old heaters and how we were lucky the fire didn't spread faster. But each word lands wrong, like he rehearsed them. Mara watches him with a tight jaw, and when our eyes meet, hers say what I'm too weak to voice. Something's not adding up. Navarro stays quiet, but his silence has weight. When he finally steps closer and asks if I remember anything unusual before the fire, the question slices the air. I open my mouth, unsure if the words forming inside me are real memories or just fear, pretending to be true. Navarro asks a second question, slower, more deliberate, and the room seems to shrink around me. My throat tightens as I sift through fragments that feel borrowed rather than remembered. The cabin door is slamming, a muffled argument, the smell of something chemical in the air. Evan interrupts before I can speak, placing a hand on my shoulder like he owns the right to answer for me. His touch sparks something sharp in my chest, something that whispers danger. Mara steps forward, eyes narrowing, tension rising like a storm caught between the four of us. The monitor beside me spikes, matching the rhythm of my heartbeat. I take a breath and try to speak, try to say what I saw or thought I saw, but the words crumble before they leave my mouth. All I manage is a trembling whisper. I don't think this was an accident. Evan freezes when he hears my words, and for a moment his expression fractures, just a flicker. But I see it. A flash of something between panic and anger. He recovers quickly, brushing off my doubt with a laugh that sounds too thin. Navarro doesn't laugh. He steps closer, lowering his voice as he asks what exactly makes me think that. I hesitate, because the truth is terrifying. I remember someone standing over me as the flames roared behind them. But the face is smeared in my mind, distorted by heat and terror. Mara urges me gently, telling me to say what I feel, not what I'm supposed to believe. My fingers twitch on the blanket. My voice barely rises above a breath when I admit someone was there, and the silence that follows feels heavier than the smoke that nearly killed me. The doctor arrives, scattering the tension with practiced calm, but the unease stays like a stain on the air. Evan steps back while she checks my vitals, yet he keeps glancing at me as if waiting for me to retract everything I said. I don't. The doctor mentions smoke inhalation, surface burns, and trauma. But her words fade when I notice something on the tray beside my bed. A small plastic evidence bag Navarro must have set down early. Inside it is a twisted piece of metal, blackened, bent, and horribly familiar. My stomach knots. I don't know why yet, but I'm certain I have touched that piece before the flames swallowed the cabin. Navarro sees me staring and asks softly if I recognize it. My pulse spikes. I whisper, I think I do, even though the memory still sits just out of reach, waiting to strike. The piece of twisted metal stays burned into my thoughts long after Navarro leaves. I keep running my thumb over the sheet, trying to trigger the memory hiding just beneath the surface. When night falls, the room grows still, but my mind doesn't. Shadows stretch across the ceiling in shapes that feel too familiar, like flames licking upward. Evan sits in the corner, pretending to scroll his phone, but his eyes keep darting toward me as if afraid I'll remember something he doesn't want me to. My chest tightens. The silence between us feels more dangerous than the fire itself. When Mara returns with a cup of tea, she knows I want drink. She whispers that Navarro is digging deeper, that maybe this time the truth won't stay buried. I close my eyes, and in the darkness behind my eyelids, I hear it again. A heavy thud, footsteps, and a voice, low, urgent, but the words slip away before I can reach them. Navarro arrives early the next morning with a quiet knock that seems to ripple through the room. Evan straightens instantly, folding his arms like a barrier. Navarro ignores the gesture and asks me if I remember anything new. I almost say no, but a faint echo rises in my mind. A door slamming, the smell of gasoline, and someone calling my name, not in fear, but in warning. My pulse quickens. Evan steps closer, insisting I need rest and shouldn't be interrogated. Navarro doesn't flinch. He asks Evan to step outside with him for a moment, and the tension between them tightens like wire. When the door clicks shut behind them, Mara leans in, telling me that Navarro found something strange at the cabin ruins. Something that shouldn't have survived the fire. A cold shiver climbs my spine. The truth is getting closer, and so is the danger. When Evan returns after speaking with Navarro, his expression is carved from stone. He barely looks at me. Instead, he gathers his jacket and announces he needs to take care of something. His voice is too controlled, too sharp around the edges. After he leaves, the room exhales like it's been holding its breath. Mara sits on the edge of my bed and tells me Navarro discovered traces of an accelerant in the debris, hidden beneath fallen beams where the fire couldn't reach. My stomach drops. The memory fragments hit harder now. The chemical smell. The way the flames ignited too fast, too bright. I whisper that someone was already inside the cabin when the fire began, and Mara's face pales. Before she can respond, Navarro steps back in, watching me with steady, patient eyes. Tell me everything you saw. He says softly, and for the first time, I feel the truth rising instead of running. I try to speak, but fear wraps around my ribs like a tightening band. Navarro waits, not rushing me. Slowly the memories begin to uncoil. The creak of footsteps behind me, the faint glow of a flashlight slicing through the dark cabin, the quick, sharp rasp of metal against wood. My breathing hitches as I remember turning toward the door and seeing it slam shut from the outside. Mara squeezes my hand, grounding me. Navarro's jaw tightens, but his voice remains steady as he asks if I'm certain. I nod, tears burning behind my eyes. Someone trapped me inside. Evan returns minutes later, and the shift in his posture is immediate when he sees us talking. His smile is too tight, his movements too rehearsed. Something inside me cracks open. A realization I'm not ready to admit aloud. The person who closed that door might not have been a stranger. Night settles over the hospital like a heavy curtain, muting every sound except the steady beeping of my monitor. Mara has gone home to rest. Navarro left with promises of returning tomorrow, and Evan has disappeared somewhere in the halls. I lie awake, staring at the ceiling as pieces of memory click into place like cruel gears turning. The metal fragment, the accelerant, the locked door, and the silhouette standing just beyond the flames. My chest tightens until it hurts to breathe. When Evan finally returns, He stands at the foot of my bed without saying a word, watching me with unreadable eyes. For a moment, neither of us moves. Then he asks quietly, "What exactly are you telling Navarro?" His voice is soft, but the air around him feels sharp. I swallow hard, realizing the truth. I am no longer recovering. I am being watched. I barely sleep. Every time I drift off, I see that door slamming, the fire surging forward as if someone had fed it. By the time sunlight returns, my nerves feel scraped raw. Evan is already awake, sitting stiffly near the window like a man guarding something fragile. When he notices I'm watching, he forces a smile that never reaches his eyes. He asks how I'm feeling, but the question sounds hollow, like he's reading it off a cue card. Mara arrives minutes later, and the energy in the room shifts sharply. Evan stands, suddenly restless. Mara ignores him, placing a gentle hand on my unburned arm as she asks if I remembered more. Her voice is soft, but her eyes are sharp. I nod slowly, and Evan's jaw tightens. The monitor beside me spikes again, mirroring the rising dread twisting inside my chest. Something in this room is lying to me, and something else is getting ready to break. Navarro enters just as Evan opens his mouth to speak, and the timing feels deliberate. He nods at Mara before turning to me, asking gently if my memory has sharpened since last night. Evan steps closer, trying to insert himself into the conversation, but Navarro cuts him off with a calm, firm request to give us space. The two men lock eyes in a silent standoff, and for a moment I think Evan might refuse. But then he steps back, jaw clenched so tightly the muscles twitch. Navarro pulls up a chair and lowers his voice as he tells me they found burn patterns at the cabin that don't match an electrical fire. The words sink like stones in my stomach. Finally, the world around me slows enough for me to admit what's been clawing at me. Someone didn't want me to leave that cabin alive. When I whisper that I remember seeing a figure near the door, Navarro listens without judgment. Mara squeezes my hand, grounding me in the moment I can no longer deny. As Navarro continues his questions, the edges of my memory sharpen. I remember the heat, too fast, too violent to be natural. I remember the floor creaking under someone's weight behind me, and I remember reaching for the doorknob only to find it scorching hot, as if someone had held something burning against it. Navarro takes careful notes, but it's Mara who looks shaken. She asks what time I remember being inside the cabin, and when I tell her, she goes completely still. Evan shifts uneasily, stepping forward quickly as if to stop her from speaking. But she ignores him. Her voice drops when she says she saw Evan leaving the cabin earlier that night, long before the fire. The room freezes. Evan's eyes darken, and he denies everything. But something inside me shatters. The timeline is changing, and it's changing because someone is lying. The air feels tight, like the entire room is holding its breath. Evan's denial comes too fast, too desperate, and Navarro immediately asks him where he actually was that night. The question slices through the tension, but Evan doesn't answer. He just turns his gaze on me, something wounded and accusatory flickering in his eyes. Mara steps between us before he can come closer, and that small act says more than any words could. Navarro watches Evan carefully, noting every twitch, every pause. I try to remember more, anything that could explain why Evan was near the cabin before the fire, but the memories come like jagged flashes, painful and incomplete. All I know is that fear was already in me before the flames touched my skin. And sitting here now, the fear returns, sharper than before, telling me that the truth might not just hurt, it might destroy what's left of my life. By late afternoon, Navarro receives a call that pulls him briefly from the room. Evan takes the chance to move closer to me, his voice dropping low as he insists Mara is twisting things, that stress and medication are clouding my judgment. But it's the way he says it, too smooth, too careful, that makes my stomach turn. When Mara returns from the hall, Evan steps back quickly. But she saw enough. She leans close and whispers that she knows more, something she's been afraid to tell me. My heart pounds so loudly it drowns out the hospital hum. She swallows hard before admitting she heard Evan arguing with someone on the phone the night before the fire, his voice furious, saying he couldn't let this ruin everything. The words hit like a physical blow. When Navarro steps back in moments later, his expression is tight, because the call he received confirms something chilling. The fire was set intentionally, and someone wanted to make sure I didn't walk away. Navarro closes the door behind him with a quiet click, but the weight of what he's about to say fills the room like smoke. He explains that investigators found a second ignition point, proof the fire was set deliberately in more than one place. My breath catches. Mara places a steadying hand on my shoulder, but her fingers tremble. Evan doesn't move. His face stays still, too still. But his eyes flicker the moment Navarro mentions accelerant, traces on a tool found near the back entrance of the cabin. My pulse hammers. Navarro asks if I've remembered anything specific about the person who shut the door. I close my eyes and suddenly feel the heat again. The roar flames behind me, and the heavy outline of a figure blocking the exit. My voice breaks as I whisper that the shadow wasn't tall. It was exactly Evan's height. Silence slams down like a fist. Evan finally speaks, but his denial is brittle, cracking around the edges, and for the first time I can hear fear inside it. Navarro asks Evan directly why Mara saw him near the cabin the night before the fire, and the question lands like a blow. Evan stammers, insisting he went there only to check on a loose shutter, but even he seems unsure of the lie. Mara steps forward, anger uncoiling from her like a whip, as she tells Navarro she heard Evan arguing with someone the night before. Someone who warned him that she's getting too close. Evan's face drains of color. I feel the room spin. Navarro keeps his voice steady, but steel edges through every word as he tells Evan the evidence suggests the fire was started inside first, not outside. That someone wanted whoever was inside to stay there. My stomach knots. Evan turns to me, eyes glistening with something twisted. Blame, desperation, or fear. His voice cracks as he says I'm remembering wrong. But the more he talks, the more the truth grows sharp and undeniable. Something terrible was happening long before those flames touched me. The tension in the room thickens until it feels hard to breathe. Evan runs a hand through his hair, pacing, muttering that the investigation is wrong, that Mara is lying, that I'm confused. But his voice trembles, betraying him. Navarro folds his arms and asks why Evan's fingerprints were found on a broken lantern near the back doorway, the same lantern that investigators believe was used to spread fuel. Evan stops moving. His eyes flick toward me for just a second. But in that second, I finally see him clearly. Not the husband who held my hand in hospital beds, not the man who promised to protect me. Someone else entirely. Mara whispers for me not to look away, and I realize she's right. If I look away now, I might never face what's coming. My heart pounds as Navarro steps closer to Evan, telling him that until he explains the evidence, he's a prime suspect. Evan finally speaks, but instead of defending himself, he quietly says, "You don't understand what she was planning." The words slice through me like ice. The room falls silent after Evan's accusation. My blood runs cold. What I was planning, I repeat, the words barely escaping my lips. Evan's breathing turns shallow as he insists I was going to leave him, that he found messages on my phone, that I was trying to ruin everything. I stare at him, unable to process the twisting of my intentions into threats. Mara's voice breaks through, sharp and furious, telling him that wanting safety is not betrayal, and that none of this explains the fire. Navarro steps in before Evan can respond, asking him if the fire was meant to scare me or silence me. Evan's gaze snaps to Navarro, and for a split second something dark flickers behind his eyes. I feel a chill sweep down my spine. Suddenly the memory hits, the door slamming, the silhouette outside, the sound of metal scraping wood, and then Evan's voice yelling my name, but not in fear, in anger. My breath shakes as the truth sharpens into something unmistakable. Navarro steps outside to make a call, leaving the three of us in a silence that feels like a held breath before a storm. Evan's eyes track me with unsettling intensity, and for the first time, I'm not sure what he's capable of. Mara positions herself closer to me, ready to intervene if needed. My mind spins, replaying the fragments of memory that have finally begun to form a whole. The argument in the cabin, the smell of accelerant, the metal lantern scraping across the floor, and Evan's silhouette blocking the door. Before everything ignited, my skin prickles with rising fear. When Navarro returns, his face is set in a grim expression. He tells us the lab results came back. Accelerant was found on the lantern handle and on a section of the doorframe at hand height, and Evan's fingerprints were the only ones present. My breath trembles. The small, fragile hope that this was all a misunderstanding crumbles to ash. Because now, the truth isn't just suspected, it's undeniable. Evan doesn't speak at first. He just stares at the evidence envelope in Navarro's hand as if it's some kind of illusion he can blink away. When he finally does talk, his voice is low, shaky, threaded with a panic he's trying desperately to hide. He says he was trying to fix things that I'd been pulling away, that he only went to the cabin to talk, but his words spill out too fast, collapsing under their own weight. Mara steps closer to me, her presence a shield, as she demands to know why accelerant was found on the lantern. Why his fingerprints were on it. Evan swears it wasn't what it looks like, but every excuse feels like he's tightening a net around himself. Navarro warns him to stop talking, but Evan keeps going, rambling about our marriage, my silence, his fear of losing control. And in that moment I understand the truth. The fire wasn't about killing me. It was about keeping, and that realization burns more deeply than any flame. Navarro calmly instructs Evan to sit, but Evan ignores him, pacing in small, jerky steps like a man being hunted by his own thoughts. He mutters that none of this makes sense, that everything he did was to save us, not destroy us. My breath trembles as I realize how deep his delusions run. Mara doesn't hold back. She tells him that love doesn't trap people in burning rooms, that fear doesn't justify violence. Evan's head snaps toward her, anger simmering beneath his skin. For a moment, I see the man who stood in that doorway as flames swallowed the cabin. Navarro steps between us before Evan's frustration becomes something worse. With quiet authority, he tells Evan the investigation will continue formally now, that he may need to come down to the station. Evan's face crumbles. He whispers that we're all turning on him, but the truth is, he turned on me long before the fire ever started. The air thickens again when Navarro steps out to make another call. Evan takes the opportunity to edge closer, desperation tightening every line in his face. He begs me to listen, to remember the good parts, to forget the rest. His voice cracks as he says he can't live without me. Mara steps forward instantly, warning him to keep his distance, but Evan barely hears her. His eyes are locked on me, frantic, pleading. I feel my heartbeat skitter as fragments of memory sharpen, the argument in the cabin, his voice hard and cold, his hands shaking as he held the lantern, his promise that we'd fix things, no matter what it took. I whisper that I remember more now, and Evan's expression shifts in an instant, from fear to something darker, almost resigned. Mara stiffens. When Navarro returns and sees Evan's stance, he moves quickly, positioning himself between us. And in that moment, the final pieces click into place. Evan didn't lose control that night. He made a choice. Evan's voice turns hollow as he insists the fire wasn't supposed to be that bad. that he only wanted to scare me into staying, that everything spiraled out of control. My throat closes. Mara's hand curls into a fist, rage shaking through her, but Navarro signals her to stand back as he begins to Mirandize Evan. The words echo through the room like distant thunder. Evan tries to argue, tries to twist the truth one more time, but Navarro stays steady, professional, unmoved. Evan turns to me in a final plea, saying he did it because he loved me. But love shouldn't suffocate, shouldn't burn, shouldn't lock doors and strike matches. My tears fall freely now, not from pain, but from mourning the life I thought I had. Evan sags as Navarro tells him he needs to come to the station. For the first time, Evan looks small, frail, and terrifyingly unfamiliar. As Navarro escorts Evan toward the door, I feel a weight lift, yet a deeper ache settles beneath it. Evan pauses before leaving, turning toward me one last time. There's no love in his expression now, only a hollow resentment, like he's mourning the version of me who stayed quiet. Navarro leads him out, and the room finally exhales. Mara sinks into the chair beside my bed, exhaustion and heartbreak written across her face. She tells me she's proud of me, that I survived more than just a fire. I close my eyes as memories of the cabin flicker. Smoke curling upward, wood cracking, Evan's silhouette framed by flames. But now, mixed with fear, there's something new. Clarity. The fire didn't destroy me. It revealed the truth. And though the scars still burn, they no longer whisper lies. They remind me I escaped someone who never intended to let me walk out of that cabin alive. The hospital feels too small after Evan is taken away. The walls press in, humming with echoes of everything he confessed, everything I tried not to believe. Navarro tells me they're keeping him overnight for questioning that I'm safe. But safety feels complicated now. Mara refuses to leave my side, her presence a steady anchor as my thoughts churn. I can't shake the feeling that the answers I need aren't in this room. They're still out there, buried in ashes and half-burned memories. When Navarro asks if I'm strong enough to return to the cabin ruins, something inside me tightens, but I nod. I need to see it. I need to face the place where everything broke. The drive is tense and silent, and when we finally pull up beside the blackened remains of the cabin, the world seems to hold its breath. The smell of char still lingers. My heart begins pounding, not from fear, but from recognition. The night of the fire isn't done with me yet. The ground crunches beneath my shoes as I step closer to the place where the kitchen used to be. Memories begin to stir, soft at first, then sharper, rising like smoke. I see the lantern in Evan's hand, the way his shoulders shook, not from fear but fury. Navarro walks a few steps ahead, marking areas where investigators found unusual burn patterns. Mara stays beside me, her hand hovering near my back as if ready to catch me when the memories hit, and they do. Hard. I remember arguing with Evan, telling him I needed space, that I couldn't breathe, his voice rising, mine breaking. Then the sudden acrid smell that didn't belong. Something chemical, sharp, deliberate. My pulse races as I realize the cabin didn't just burn. It was prepared to burn. Navarro watches me carefully, his expression softening as I struggle for air. Take your time, he says. But time isn't the problem. It's what I'm finally remembering. My breathing grows uneven as a new memory pushes its way to the front. The moment I realized something was horribly wrong. The door slammed before I could reach it. I had turned toward the sound, expecting Evan to be outside it, furious but willing to talk. But instead, I saw the shadow move away, slow and certain, as if the fire behind me didn't matter. I gasp, clutching the edge of a fallen beam. Mara steadies me as Navarro steps closer. I tell him I think Evan wasn't alone that night. There was someone else outside the cabin. Navarro's brows furrow as he asks for details, but the face stays blurred in my mind. All I can remember is the shape. A smaller build than Evan, a lighter step, a whisper of hesitation before the fire roared. Mara's face drains of color. She whispers the possibility neither of us wanted to consider. What if someone helped him? The thought chills me deeper than the mountain air ever could. Navarro takes a slow breath, absorbing my words. He looks out over the ruins, thoughtful in a way that makes my stomach twist. Mara starts pacing, muttering that Evan must have had help, that someone else had a reason to keep the truth hidden. I try to piece together the blurry fragments, the footsteps, the muffled voice outside the door, the way the shadow lingered as if unsure. Navarro asks if I remember anything about the voice. I close my eyes, reaching back through smoke and fear. And then, faintly, I hear it. A soft voice saying my name, not in anger, but in apology. It sends a shiver through me. Mara freezes when I repeat it aloud. Her face tightens, guilt flashing in her eyes before she can hide it. My heart drops. The last person I expected to see, reflected in that shadow, was her. Not in malice, but in fear. And suddenly, everything spins. The world narrows to the sound of Mara's breathing. Sharp, uneven, terrified. Navarro steps forward, asking her calmly what she knows. Mara shakes her head, tears gathering as she insists she never meant for anyone to get hurt. My chest tightens as she admits she followed me to the cabin that night, worried because Evan had been acting strange. She heard us arguing. She saw him lock the door, and she panicked, banging on the side of the cabin, trying to distract him, trying to get him to stop. But when the fire erupted, she froze. She ran for help, but by the time she returned, the cabin was already a roaring inferno. My heart breaks, not from betrayal, but from the weight she's carried alone. Navarro steps between us, his voice steady as he assures her she did the right thing by coming clean now. I look at her, tears burning, and whisper that she saved me, even if she never realized it. And as the sky darkens over the ruins, I finally understand. The night didn't just take something from me. It returned the truth. Night settles over the ruins, chilling the air and sharpening every sound. Navarro walks a slow circle around the burned frame of the cabin, radio crackling at his hip, while Mara and I stand close together, both shaken but steadier than before. I can feel the truth breathing in these ashes, heavy, undeniable. Navarro tells us the team downtown is processing Evan's statements and the evidence, but he warns us gently that people who feel cornered sometimes lash out. The words lodge in my chest like a warning I wasn't ready to hear. A branch snaps somewhere deeper in the woods. Mara stiffens beside me. Navarro lifts a hand, signaling us to stay still. Suddenly, the truth hits me with chilling clarity. Evan isn't locked away. Not yet. And in the growing darkness, I feel him before I hear him. The slow crunch of footsteps on burnt debris, the soft hum of a familiar breath, and the unmistakable sensation that the night has just brought my past back to finish what it started. Navarro moves toward the sound, calm but ready, one hand hovering near his holster. Mara grips my arm tighter, whispering that we should go back to the car. But before we can, Evan steps out from the shadows, his clothes wrinkled, face pale, eyes wild with desperation. He looks nothing like the man I once loved. He looks hollowed out, consumed by something he can't control. Navarro orders him to stop moving, but Evan barely hears him. His eyes stay fixed on me. He begins rambling. About us, about mistakes, about how everything can still be fixed if I would just listen. Mara shouts at him to stay back, but he keeps walking, stepping closer to the ruins as if returning to the scene will rewrite the past. My heart thunders. The flames didn't break him. The truth did. And now, the night he created is dragging all of us back into its grip. Evan's voice rises, cracking as he begs me to come home, as if that house still exists, as if the fire didn't swallow it, the same way his lies swallowed us. Navarro steps forward, lowering his tone, trying to keep the situation from unraveling. But Evan is unraveling himself. Every sentence comes apart at the seams. He insists he didn't mean to hurt me, that he only wanted to stop me from leaving, that he lost control but can fix everything. The words crawl under my skin. My legs shake, but I force myself to stand tall. I tell him the fire didn't tie me to him. It freed me. The truth hits him like a strike. His expression twists, hurt curdling into rage. Mara grabs my hand as Navarro inches closer. The woods seem to close in around us. Evan takes a single step forward that shifts everything. Navarro's voice sharpens. I realize I'm seconds away from losing everything all over again unless I stay strong. And this time, I do. The tension snaps like a brittle branch. Evan lunges, not toward Navarro, not toward Mara, but toward me, reaching out with shaking hands, as if to drag me back into the fire he built. Navarro reacts instantly, shouting for him to stop as he steps in front of me. But Evan is fueled by something wild and broken. Mara screams my name, pulling me backward as Navarro tries to restrain him. The struggle is fast and chaotic, boots scuffing against ash, wood cracking under weight, Navarro trying to keep Evan from hurting anyone, even in desperation. Evan's voice comes out in choked, furious sobs, insisting I belong with him, that everything he did was for us. But the flames didn't lie. My scars didn't lie, and neither does the fear in his eyes as Navarro finally forces him to the ground. The fight leaves Evan trembling, defeated, and suddenly so small amid the ruins of everything he destroyed. Once Evan is secured in Navarro's custody, the night finally exhales. The woods quiet, the air settles, and the ruins stop feeling like a threat. They feel like a grave for the life I escaped. Mara wraps an arm around me, both of us shaking as we watch Navarro guide Evan toward the patrol car. Evan doesn't fight anymore. He doesn't yell. He just watches me with hollow eyes, as if trying to understand how the fire he built failed to keep me. But survival isn't about the absence of fear. It's about choosing yourself even when fear tries to bury you. Mara whispers that I'm safe now, and for the first time, I believe her. As the patrol car disappears down the dirt road, I look back at the cabin ruins. The night that tried to claim me has finally ended. My scars still burn, but their story has changed. They no longer remind me of what was done to me. They remind me of what I survived. And that is a truth no flame can erase.